Hello students, welcome to the lecture on employee welfare and social security. And after this lecture, we will be able to learn the following objectives. Understand concept of employee welfare, explain welfare agencies, describe the statutory provisions for employee welfare in India, define the employee referral scheme, define the ethical issues in business. Let's start with what employee welfare is. Employee welfare is one of the key inputs to bring about the desired level of employee satisfaction, motivation, and productivity in the organization. The basic objective of welfare measures is to ensure the physical and mental well-being of the employee. An organization must view employee welfare measures as an investment rather than an expense. This is because the profitability of an organization is directly linked to the productivity of its workforce. In turn, the employee's productivity is decided to a considerable extent by the motivational environment created by the employee welfare measures undertaken by the organization. The primary purpose of undertaking employee welfare measures is to earn and retain the goodwill and loyalty. Social security is one of the principal components of employee welfare schemes. It is indeed an economic protection provided to the employees and their dependents by the government through a series of programs. This protection is usually available to the employees against a loss of earnings caused by old age, sickness, unemployment, disability, and death. The driving force behind social security measures is to safeguard the employees against all forms of social risks that affect the employee's ability to fulfill their basic requirements. The purpose of providing such security is to help the employees and their dependents lead a dignified life in any situation and achieve social justice and equality. Social security to the employees was by and large ensured through legislations passed by the central and state authorities. In fact, the first Social Security Act was passed in the United States in 1934 as part of social reforms to protect the life of workers and their families against all forms of misfortunes that cannot be eliminated from the world totally. In fact, the agonies of the workers the world over during the economic crisis of the Great Depression was an immediate reason for the development of a social security net for the employees. Moving on to the next topic, we shall talk about the concept of employee welfare. The concept of labor welfare is flexible and elastic and differs widely with time, region, industry, social values and customs, degree of industrialization, the general socio-economic development of the people, and the political ideologies prevailing at a particular time. It is also molded according to the age groups, socio-cultural background, marital and economic status, and education level of the workers in various industries. In its broad connotation, the term welfare refers to a state of living of an individual or group in a desirable relationship with total environment, ecological, economic and social. Conceptually as well as operationally, labor welfare is a part of social welfare, which in turn is closely linked to the concept and the role of the state which is applicable in the plant. The concept of social welfare in its narrow contours has been equated with economic welfare. As these goals are not always be realized by individuals through their efforts alone, the government came into the picture and gradually began to take over the responsibility for the free and full development of human personality of its population. Labor welfare is an extension of the term welfare and its application to labor. During the industrialization process, the stress on labor productivity increased and brought about changes in the thinking on labor welfare. In its broad connotation, the term welfare refers to a state of living of an individual or group in desirable relationship with total environment, ecological, economic and social. Conceptually as well as operationally, labor welfare is a part of social welfare, which in turn is closely linked to the concept and the role of the state. The concept of social welfare in its narrow contours has been equated with economic welfare. Pigou defined it as that part of general welfare which can be brought directly or indirectly into relations with the measuring rod of money, Pigou. According to Wilinski and L.A. Bukes, social welfare alludes to those formally organized and socially sponsored institutions, agencies and programs which function to maintain or improve the economic conditions, health or interpersonal competence of some parts or all of a population. Wilinski and L.A. Bukes. As these goals may not always be realized by individuals through their efforts alone, the government came into the picture and gradually began to take over the responsibility for the free and full development of human personality of its population. An early study under the UN observed as follows: in our opinion, most underdeveloped countries are in the situation that investment in people is likely to prove as productive in the purely material sense as any investment in material resources, and in many cases, investment in people would lead to a greater increase of the flow of goods and services than would follow upon any comparable investment in material capital. The theory that welfare expenditure, especially expenditure on health and education, is productive investment has led to the view that workers could work more productively if they were given fair deal both at the workplace and in the community. The concept of labor welfare has received inspiration from the concepts of democracy and welfare state. Democracy does not simply denote a form of government. It is rather a way of life based on certain values such as equal rights and privileges for all. The operation of welfare services in actual practice brings to bear on it different reflections representing the broad cultural and social conditions. In short, labor welfare is the voluntary efforts of the employers to establish within the existing industrial system working and sometimes living and cultural conditions of the employees beyond what is required by law, the custom of the industry and the conditions of the market. The constituents of labor welfare included working hours, working conditions, safety, industrial health insurance, workmen's compensation, provident funds, gratuity, pensions, protection against indebtedness, industrial housing, restrooms, canteens, creches, wash places, toilet facilities, lunches, cinemas, theatres, music, reading rooms, holiday rooms, workers' education, cooperative stores, excursions, playgrounds and scholarships and other help for education of employees' children. Employee welfare is in the interest of the employee, the employer and the society as a whole. The objectives of employee welfare are: it helps to improve. It improves the loyalty and morale of the employees. It reduces labor turnover and absenteeism. Welfare measures help to improve the goodwill and public image of the enterprise. It helps to improve industrial relations and industrial peace. It helps to improve employee productivity. The features of employee welfare are: employee welfare is a comprehensive term including various services, facilities and amenities provided to employees for their betterment. The basic purpose is to improve the lot of working class. Employee welfare is a dynamic concept. Employee welfare measures are also known as fringe benefits and services. Welfare measures may be both voluntary and statutory. The agencies of employee welfare are: central government. The central government has made elaborate provision on the health, safety and welfare of workers under the Factories Act 1948 and Mines Act 1952. These acts provided for canteens, creches, shelters, restrooms, lunchrooms, washing facilities, etc. They also regulate the age of employee, hours of work make, and also provision for the appointment of laboured welfare officers. The state governments have been empowered to prescribe duties, qualification and condition of service of these welfare officers. Statutory welfare funds have been set up in important industries and mines to provide games, housing, hospitalization, educational, maternity, child care and recreational facilities. Similar facilities are provided under the Plantation Labour Act 1951 and Motor Transport Workers Act. State government. Government in different states and union territories provide welfare facilities to workers. Many of them run health and family planning centers, centers for education, vocational guidance, recreation and training of workers and other welfare centers. The importance of such centers cannot be overstated. Employers. Employers in India in general looked upon welfare work as fruitless and barren, though some of them indeed had done pioneering work. Trade unions. In India, trade unions have done little for the welfare of workers, but few sound and strong unions have been the pioneering in this respect. Example, the Ahmedabad Textiles Labour Association and the Mazdoor Sabha, Kanpur. Other agencies. Some philanthropic, charitable social service organizations like Seva Sadan Society, YMCA, etc. The types of welfare services are: intramural. These are provided within the organization like canteen, restrooms, creches, uniform, etc. Extramural. These are provided outside the organization like housing, education, child welfare, leave travel facilities, interest-free loans, workers' cooperative stores, vocational guidance, etc. The preamble to our Indian Constitution promises justice, social, economic and political. It also stresses equality of status and of opportunity. Article 23 of the Constitution prohibits traffic in human beings and forced labor. Article 24 prohibits employment of children in factories. The Article 38 and 39, spelled under directive principles of state policy, are now enforceable as per the dictums laid by our Supreme Court. Constitution of India, Article 38. State to secure a social order for the promotion of welfare of the people. The state shall strive to promote the welfare of the people by securing and protecting as effectively as it may a social order in which justice, social, economic and political, shall inform all the institutions of the national life. The state shall in particular strive to minimize the inequalities in income and endeavor to eliminate inequalities in status, facilities and opportunities, not only amongst individuals but also amongst groups of people residing in different areas or engaged in different vocations. Constitution of India, Article 39. Certain principles of policy to be followed by the state. The state shall, in particular, direct its policy towards securing that the citizens, men and women equally, have the right to an adequate means to livelihood. That the ownership and control of the material resources of the community are so distributed as best to subserve the common good. That the operation of the economic system does not result in the concentration of wealth and means of production to the common detriment. That there is equal pay for equal work for both men and women. That the health and strength of workers, men and women, and the tender age of children are not abused, and that citizens are not forced by economic necessity to enter a vocations unsuited to their age or strength. Those children are given opportunities and facilities to develop in a healthy manner and in conditions of freedom and dignity, and that childhood and youth are protected against exploitation and against moral and material abandonment. Many non-statutory welfare schemes may include the following schemes: personal health care, regular medical checkups. Some of the companies provide the facility for extensive health checkup. Flexi time. The main objective of the flexi time policy is to provide opportunity to employees to work with flexible working schedules. Flexible work schedules are initiated by employees and approved by management to meet business commitments while supporting employees' personal life needs. Employee assistance programs. Various assistant programs are arranged like external counseling service so that employees or members of their immediate family can get counseling on various matters. Harassment policy. To protect an employee from harassments of any kind, guidelines are provided for proper action and also for protecting the aggrieved employee. Maternity and adoption leave. Employees can avail maternity or adoption leaves. Paternity leave policies have also been introduced by various companies. Mediclaim insurance scheme. This insurance scheme provides adequate insurance coverage of employees for expenses related to hospitalization due to illness, disease or injury or pregnancy. Moving on to the next topic, let's talk about the employee referral scheme. In several companies, employee referral scheme is implemented to encourage employees to refer friends and relatives for employment in the organization. Some of the important statutory welfare measures given by the government are as follows: the Factories Act of 1948, the Employees State Insurance Act 1948, the Payment of Wages Act 1936, the Workmen's Compensation Act 1923, the Employees Provident Funds and Miscellaneous Provisions Act 1952, the Payment of Gratuity Act 1962, the Maternity Benefit Act 1961, Factories Act of 1948. Purpose of this act: an act to consolidate and amend the law regulating labor in factories. The Factories Act is meant to provide protection to the workers from being exploited by the greedy business employments and provides for the improvement of working conditions within the factory premises. The main function of this act is to look after the welfare of the workers, to protect the workers from exploitations and unhygienic working conditions, to provide safety measures and to ensure social justice. Sections 11 to 20 of the Factories Act deal about health. Health, Section 11. Cleanliness, Section 12. Disposal of waste and effluents. Section 13. Providing proper ventilation and maintaining proper temperature. Section 14. Removal of dust and fume. Section 15. Providing artificial humidification. Section 16. No overcrowding. Section 17. Proper lighting. Section 18. Providing pure drinking water. Section 19. Providing latrines and urinals. Section 20. Providing spittoon. Drinking water. At all the working places, safe, hygienic drinking water should be provided. Facilities for sitting. In every organization, especially factories, suitable seating arrangements are to be provided. First aid appliances. First aid appliances are to be provided and should be readily accessible so that in case of any minor accident, initial medication can be provided to the needed employee. Toilet facilities. A sufficient number of latrines and urinals are to be provided in the office and factory premises and are also to be maintained in a neat and clean condition. Canteen facilities. Cafeteria or canteens are to be provided by the employer so as to provide hygienic and nutritious food to the employees. Safety. Section 21. Proper fencing of machinery. Section 22. Precautions. Work on or near machinery in motion. Section 23. No employment of young persons on dangerous machines. Section 24. Providing striking gear and devices for cutting off power. Section 25. Precautions near self-acting machines. Section 26. Casing of new machinery. Section 27. Prohibition of employment of women and children near cotton openers. Section 28. Providing hoists and lifts. Section 29. Provision for lifting machines, chains, ropes and lifting tackles. Section 30. Protection near revolving machinery. Safety of employees. Fencing of machinery. All dangerous and moving parts of machinery shall be securely fenced. Screws, bolts and teeth shall be completely encased to prevent danger. Work on or near machinery in motion. Lubrication or other adjusting operation on moving machinery shall be done only by a specially trained adult male worker. Employment of young persons on dangerous machines. No young person shall be allowed to work on any dangerous machine so prescribed by the state government unless he is sufficiently trained or is working under the supervision of knowledgeable person. Device for cutting off power. Suitable device for cutting off power in emergencies shall be provided. Hoists and lifts. These shall be made of good material and strength, thoroughly examined at least once in every 6 months and suitably protected to prevent any person or thing from being trapped. The Workmen's Compensation Act 1923. Purpose of the Act. An act to provide for the payment of certain classes of employers to their workmen of compensation for injury by accident. The Workmen's Compensation Act 1923 is one of the earliest pieces of labor legislation. This act encompasses all cases of accidents arising out of and in course of employment. The rate of compensation to be paid in a lump sum is determined by a schedule provided in the Act proportionate to the extent of injury and the loss of earning capacity. The younger the age of the worker and higher the wage, the greater is the compensation. The Act provides the formula for calculating the compensation. The injured person can claim compensation, and in the case of death, the compensation is claimed by dependents of the deceased. This law applies to the organized as well as unorganized sectors that are not covered by the ESI scheme. The following definitions and the sections of law are presented for the students to take note of them. The Act is administered by the state governments which appoint commissioners for this purpose under Section 20 of the Act. The Payment of Wages Act was enacted as early as 1936 during the colonial rule. The purpose of this Act is to regulate payment of wages. This insists on the payment of wages by the 7th day or the 10th day of the succeeding month, and in case of weekly payment, the last day of the week. Section 3. Responsibility for payment of wages. Every employer shall be responsible for the payment to person employed by him of all wages required to be paid under this Act, provided that in the case of persons employed otherwise than by a contractor. In factories, if a person has been named as the manager of the factory under clause of subsection 1 of Section 7 of the Factories Act 1948, 63 of 1948. In industrial or other establishments, if there is a person responsible to the employer for the supervision and control of the industrial or other establishments. Upon railways, otherwise that in factories, if the employer is the railway administration and the railway administration has nominated a person in this behalf for the local area concerned, the person so named, the person so responsible to the employer, or the person so nominated, as the case may be, shall also be responsible for such payment. The purpose of this Act, an Act to provide for the institution of Provident funds, pension funds and deposit-linked fund for employees in factories and other establishments. Contributions of 10% of the wages are paid by the employer and another 10% by the employees. This amount is deposited with the government, which pays an interest. This Act also now has provisions for pension scheme. Administration. The employees' provident funds, pensions and insurance schemes framed under the Act are administered by a tripartite Central Board of Trustee consisting of representatives of employers and employees and persons nominated by the central and state governments. Benefits. The Act has made schemes for 3 types of benefits: Provident Fund, Family Pension and Deposit-Linked Insurance. Family pension is payable to the widow or widower up to the date of death or remarriage, whichever is earlier. Did you know? In the Roman Empire, social welfare to help the poor was enlarged by the Emperor Trajan. Ethical business practices are actions and attitudes held by a business and its employees that are considered professionally and morally responsible. These types of practices typically seek to promote the goals of the company without sacrificing the common good of its employees, customers, and even competitors. This often includes programs to ensure fair hiring and promotion within a company, treating customers fairly, and being honest in regard to programs to increase sales. Ethical business practices are often initiated as a top-down program, with corporate officers and the heads of the company acting as role models of behavior for other employees. For many companies, ethical business practices do not have to obstruct the pursuit of profits and professional growth. There is often a fallacious assumption that a business should do anything to make money and get ahead, yet many companies have been successful while still acting in a way that is ethical and serves the common good as well as the corporate good. These sorts of ethical business practices can begin. Now, in the end, let us summarize what we have learned in this lecture. Employee welfare measures are one of the key inputs to bring about the desired level of employee satisfaction, motivation, and productivity in the organization. The central government has made elaborate provisions for the health, safety, and welfare under Factories Act 1948 and Mines Act 1952. An act to provide for the payment of certain classes of employers to their workmen of compensation for injury by accident. Social security is one of the principal components of employee welfare schemes. It is indeed an economic protection provided to the employees and their dependents by the government through a series of programs. The Payment of Wages Act was enacted as early as 1936 during the colonial rule.